Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Ron Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3% of bad apes dictate the entire reputation of Welcome back, Construction Champions, to another amazing episode. I'm your facilitator, Ron Nussbaum, and what I do is I just help make this conversation happen. We bring on amazing people that operate in the construction world. And then we have conversations on what it means to be a construction champion and how you can go be better today. Just take a little bit of action. It only takes a little bit. I address it on here all the time that 99% of people will listen to this and not do anything. I'm talking to that 1%. Scott's here today. He's talking to that 1% as well. I would like to see that grow, though. Like maybe we can get like 5% of people to take some action today would be amazing, because that's how we move the industry forward. And that is what Construction Champions is all about, moving the industry forward. And we have an amazing guest today. Scott, it is fantastic to have you here today.
Yeah, Ron, thanks. I appreciate the enthusiasm, and I appreciate setting up this podcast, allowing me to be a part of it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for taking the time to be on the show today. But before we dive into it, why don't you introduce yourself to all the construction champions listening out there?
Yeah, happy to. Sure. Ashley and I have been married 27 years. So we're continuing to work on our marriage and grow and try to develop. We've put 3 kids out into the world. So we got a 24, 22, and 20-year-old, and one of those is married. And so we got a son-in-law in the household now, and that's been really, really great. And I mean that. It really has been great. Been a gift to our family. So that's been awesome. I grew up all over the country. My dad's an engineer, and so we just kind of followed the work and the promotions and that sort of thing. And then I ended up kind of got a fragmented blueprint, Ron, in that I went to public university in South Carolina, and then went and actually did a theology degree after that at seminary in Texas. So graduated there in 2001. And while I was there, I actually worked in business selling reference. I was a telemarketer, basically. And so I usually, if I talk, I'll give this opening joke. Not many people laugh, but I'll ask, or I'll kind of set the stage to say, hey, a telemarketer, a pastor, and a drug salesman walk into a bar. And I'm like, I got no punchline. Those are just my first 3 jobs. And so that's what I did. I was in seminaries working as a telemarketer. And then afterwards, I actually went to Pfizer, worked there for a couple of years, and went and was on staff at a church, planted a church. Back to Pfizer for a season. We were involved in non-governmental around the world in Nigeria. So I've been to Nigeria 30, 40 times in my life, doing some cool little non-governmental work over there. And actually ran that organization just day to day, really small organization, but ran that for a couple of years. And then we started Business on Purpose in 2015. So now I spend my professional days liberating owners from chaos. So we work with contractor owners predominantly. About 87% of our clients are contractors. So we work with contractor owners between 3 and 100 employees to help build their purpose, their people, their process, and their profit. The 4 Ps sometimes can be the 4 pains in this world of contractors. But we do it by walking them through our proprietary operating system, all so that they can be liberated from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.
I love it. I mean, you're speaking to things that people got to get right if they want to go live a great life. So, man, I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, me as well.
I'm going to dive right in there, and I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. And that is, what makes a construction champion?
Well, I'm going to stick with your C's. I've got a background as a pastor, so you got to alliterate, make everything start with the same letter, right? But from a contractor standpoint, what we found is chaos. The contractor space is a breeding ground for chaos. There is so much chaos that just grows within because, quite frankly, it really doesn't take a lot in order to get started as a contract. You can get a kitchen and bath job, you can get a variety of different things, and just sort of hang a shingle and get started. Start paying some people to come do some work. You collect some checks. You just go about it. At some point, you probably want to get licensing and bonding and those sorts of things. But the reality is, in the contractor space, a lot of people can get into it. So it's a low barrier to entry. And then with that, you'll get a lot of people that come in. And so all of a sudden, it creates this fertile soil for chaos. And so to me, what makes a champion in the space is somebody who values clarity over chaos. And so we look at the chaos and we go, you know what? I'm going to do something intentional, what we call the RPMs of great leadership: repetition, predictability, and meaning. I'm going to use those three things: repetition, predictability, and meaning, to quell the chaos. Chaos never goes away. We like to say of it that it's like a roaring lion. It prowls. It's looking to devour. And so it'll come out and you'll go, I identify that. And then you'll try to beat it back. It goes back into the woods and it comes back out over here dressed as something completely different and seductive. And so that's how chaos prowls, and it starts to grab our attention. One of the easiest forms of chaos for us to identify is in the form of something we like to call email. And yet too many contractors can't seem to get off the hook. Email, it's like a drug. It's like they love it, but that's a whole nother conversation that we can get into. So yeah, I would say a champion in this space, somebody who values clarity far more than they do loving the chaos that they're in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. We live in a lot of chaos, and I feel I've been there. I've dealt with chaos and not dealt with chaos. And it really is a lot of it because we accept it. We just think like this is reality. Like it's construction. Chaos is just going to be what it is. And we just live in that world when that does not have to be the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I actually had a coaching call this morning with a contractor. They're in a landscape contractor. And we've been working together for years. So he knows the kind of the nuances and the thing that'll set me off and that sort of thing. And he said, hey, I need to pull the kind of the, we're different card. And so what we'll tell people all the time is, oh, you're the special snowflake. I was wondering when I was going to meet the special snowflake today. And so I guess I found it. But we'll get this all the time from contractors. Well, Scott, our business is different. And they'll say that. And we'll just, kind of quietly chuckle and keep our mouth shut and just listen as if we've never heard that before. And so they'll get to it and they'll finally lay out really not what's different about their industry, but the excuses that they're buying in order to get around doing the hard work of repetition, predictability, and meaning to breed a culture of clarity over chaos. And so, yeah, you can live under that garbage and that lie to say, well, we're different. Well, so is running an event space different. So is running an ice cream shop. That's different. So is running a bowling alley. Like that's different. It's all hard. Running business is hard. There's a reason that only 4% of businesses live to see their 10th birthday. 4. And you got a much better shot of buying a business and trying to grow it than you do starting a business and growing it to have it last 10 years. So the reality is we've got to get around these excuses we make to ally ourselves with chaos, because that's all we're doing is we're kind of nudging up to it and snuggling up to it rather than going, I don't want to be in this anymore. And there's got to be something that's better than that. And there is. It just takes work. And that's usually what we're trying to avoid.
But that's the crazy thing though, is because we're in an industry where we thrive on hard work, but like the glaring things that are hard to do in business, we just say, I hear it all the time. Is exactly what you just said. We're different. How we can't do it how you're talking about it because it might have worked for you, but it doesn't work for us because of this situation. And it's complete, like it's irrelevant what they're talking about. And they, like you said, just have to get in there and do the hard work. And for some reason, we don't want to do that hard work.
Well, I think a lot of times it feels sort of kindergarten to us because I'll give you a great example. So the majority of the people that would listen to your podcast, if I were to hop on a call with them or we were to sit down and chat over lunch, we'd get into it and I would start digging on things like their culture and things like their finances and all the things it takes to run a business. And eventually they'd go, yeah, we don't really have team meetings because, I read a book called Meetings Suck. And yeah, we subscribe to that and we think meetings suck. And so we're not going to do meetings. And instead, when actually the book is completely opposite message from that. But we don't do that because, and this is the phrase that we'll get all the time, is because, Ron, we talk all day long. And we've actually gone and done studies on this. There's actually been studies conducted on this. And it's in a book called The Effective Executive, not Drucker's. It's another one of that same title. And in that book, they actually did a study that when people say, hey, we talk all day long, what they actually mean, based on the data, is they talk for 28 minutes. That's all day long, is that we're talking. When in reality, what team meetings do is they align a team together around a certain purpose. As long as there's a written, published agenda, it's 1 hour or less, and there's a defined leader and defined participants in that meeting. That's usually where we get those things wrong as well. And so we'll start to breathe this chaos by not having rally points, homes that we get together, do check-ins. You've clearly got a big military background, so you're used to this. You're used to a communications style of leadership, communication style of growth. And so in a business, it's no different. And so if you allow people to just kind of come up and go about their day and do their thing, then what you're going to get is you're going to get chaos. Well, Scott, but we talk all day long. No, you don't. You can keep saying that excuse, but you do not. And not only do you not talk all day long, but it's not a structured communication around, let's do this, let's do this, let's go through this. So a team meeting, for instance, may start with big wins every single week. We do ours every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Big wins. And then we move into what we call the anchor or the culture counter. It's our one document where everything we do in the business is on this one thing. All training due this week is on this document. Any PTO this week on this document. Wherever one of us is going to be speaking this week, it's on this document, and next week and the next week. So we have a forward look as to what's happening, and we have a home. We have a rally point for that. So what we tell people if they want to start cutting that chaos a little bit is you got to subscribe to the Big Five feedback loop. So think Big Five when you're going big game hunting in the southern part of Africa. You're looking for the Big Five, the elephant, and I don't remember what the others are. But anyway, when you go hunting in the business, you need to find these 5 communication touch points. Number 1 is a once weekly agenda-driven leader-led team meeting. Now, we don't have time to go into details on all these, but number 2 is a once weekly agenda-driven, leader-led, no more than 1 hour, departmental meeting. So this is where your operations meeting meets together, and they're talking about all the problems at 3121 Maple Street or whatever they're going to talk about. It's where the marketing team gets together, and they talk about all the marketing initiatives that are going on. It's where the sales team gets together, et cetera. That's a departmental meeting. Well, Scott, we only have 3 employees. Yeah, great. That's exactly when you should start these things. So then we move to the executive meeting, and that's where the owner and any formal key leaders once a month at minimum ought to get together and talk about the 60,000-foot view of the business. 2 more. Once annual performance review ought to happen at the end of every year. You could do it twice a year if you want. And if you ask for format, just go make your own format. What do you want to feed your team back, and what do they want to hear from you? Ask them and build a performance review around it. And number 5, this is really crucial, is a twice monthly, one-on-one check-in. So that's any leader with all of their direct reports. And so if you got more than 8, 9 direct reports, this is going to be really hard for you to do. What does that mean? You need to get rid of some of your direct reports and create another person to have a direct report around them. And so you start doing a one-on-one check-in. This is no more than 15 minutes with 5 questions. Give me a big win from the last week in your work. Number 2, what are you seeing and thinking? Number 3, what blind spots do we have, or what blind spots do I have? But number 4, what do you need from me? And number 5 is actually not a question, it's a statement. Here's what I see in you, Ron, and here's what I need from you now. If you had those 5 communication touch points, you are immediately going to punch chaos in the mouth and start to breed a culture and a soil of clarity, because now we're talking with intentionality rather than, quote, talking all day long.
I love it. And I can attest to your statement about when you have 3 people is the time to start, being somebody that started a lot of that down the road and trying to retrofit that into a business, because then at that point in time, you're trying to change culture instead of start it. And the longer you wait to do this stuff, it's harder on you because it's not part of your routine, and it's harder on your team because now they're confused, because this isn't something we've always done, and you have to address that as well as have the meetings. But this stuff is so critical, and I love the point about I had a leader that decided they were going to start doing one-on-ones with all the management and everything. And what they quickly realized was they were managing too many people, but their managers were managing more people than them. So they're like, how am I like, I'm asking them to do this. I can't even do it with the amount, like, we need to restructure some of this. And by doing what you're saying, it helps hold you accountable to what you're asking the team to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much side benefit when you do these things for one particular benefit. There's side effects, but in these cases, they're really, really good side effects. So think about this. Remember, I said it's got to be an agenda-driven, leader-led. What does that mean? Well, of course, we're going to have one person. Well, most meetings don't. Most meetings, people get together and just sort of wing it through the meeting. But then here's a key statement around the leader-led portion of that meeting. The leader does not have to be you. It doesn't have to be Ron. In fact, when we delegate the leadership of a meeting to somebody else, now what we're doing is we're building up new leadership capabilities in this other person. And you know what? It doesn't cost us anything to do that. It provides them with a great opportunity. So right now, currently today, we're a little over 10 years, about 10 and a half years in our business. We have a weekly directors meeting on Monday. I do not lead that. We have a weekly coaches meeting on Monday. I do not lead that. In fact, I'm not even in that one. We have a weekly team meeting on Tuesday. I do not lead that. And we have a weekly marketing and sales meeting on Monday. I lead that because we just started it a month ago. And I'm going to lead it for about 4 months. And then I'm going to pass it off to somebody else as a new leadership opportunity. Because guess what else happens when the founder or the owner starts leading every meeting? They start owning every meeting and talking through every meeting rather than allowing other people to step in. And so now I just get a message from Brent, the guy who leads our team meeting every week. Hey, do you need time at this week's team meeting? So he asked me because it's his meeting. It's not my meeting at that point. So think about the side benefits that come from that, from the formality of communication, from a home that can carry training. You can infuse, we say this about a team meeting. It's like going to the hospital and you got a port in your arm. And the medical profession is really, really smart in a lot of ways, but in this one way particular, instead of shooting you with a shot of vitamins or a shot of fluids or a shot of something else, giving you all these shots, they just put one port in the body. And then they only have to shoot a needle in you one time. And from there, you can shoot all these other beneficial elements. Well, that's the power of a team meeting. You got one port to the body, and now you can shoot all of these other elements to give value repetitively, predictably, and meaningfully.
Yeah, I remember when I stepped out of doing the meetings, and same thing, it was very intentional. It was, why am I doing these? For one, most of these people don't really necessarily care what, like, they don't want to hear it from me. They want to hear it from somebody else. So it was, how do we start to do that? And it was just basically asking. And then we started getting a rotation of, like, say, for our production, where we had superintendents, and it was like, well, you guys start leading these meetings. Let's start. And I at first spent time with them. Like, here's the outline I use. This is what this should look like. You've been in enough meetings that I have done. They all run the same. We just need to do that. And then it got to where they'd be like, I think we should bring some form in it. We have some leaders that are coming up in the company. I think we should teach them how to do a meeting and let them talk.
That's right.
And there's so much more buy-in when you remove yourself, because it's not like it's coming from the leader. It's coming from the people around them that they're seeing every day. So like you said, there is so much unforeseens that start to happen when you start to do this stuff that just create ripples throughout your company.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of value, but the question is, are you willing to do the work? Like, you just got to show up and be willing to do the work.
And it's not that hard. It's like you said, it's not bringing coffee and donuts and getting your other and saying, oh, we had an amazing team meeting on
Right.
Monday morning before we center. Everybody was all hyped up on caffeine, sugar, and we had some good talk. Like, for some reason, we think, like you had mentioned about the meetings, where you have to have a leader, you have to have an agenda. We think just getting together and chopping it up is like that builds something. Like, that's what they're doing on the job sites all day long.
Mm.
They don't need that they don't need that in the meeting.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I love the chaos thing, because I talk a lot I spoke at the International Builders Show last year. I'm going to do it again this year on how to control callbacks. And the way I look at it is we just control what we can control. Because what we do is we always try to control the uncontrollables, which is what leads to the chaos because we're unwilling to just control what we can. Because, like you said, that's the hard stuff. It's easier to just be like, this is out of my control. It's just happening. And you know what? It's rained for 2 weeks and it's not my fault, and move on. And how do you get guys to do the work, man?
Yeah, you know, this one of the things we talk about is we've got a leadership dictum is kind of a bias, and I stole this from somebody else, so this is not you know a novel thing, but it's kind of this bias thing that we do, and it says this: move towards, depend on, and be responsible for. And there's a phrase that goes with that, so I'll say it again: move towards, depend on, and be responsible for. And there's a phrase that I really like that's helpful, and it says, "It may not be my fault, but it is now my responsibility." And so if you own a business, that's very much the case. I like to use it in the context of um, marriage. And so when a couple's dating, let's take the lady and the guy does something. Well, the guy does something, it's his fault, but it's not really her responsibility at this point. You know, it's not really a big deal. But when they get engaged or when they get married, the guy may do something dumb. It is now her responsibility at that point, by virtue of the nature of the relationship. Well, when we get into business together, there are a lot of things that may not be my fault. The fact that it rained 2 weeks, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. It's not your fault that the subcontractor showed up late. Maybe it is, and we need to go back and look at that. But let's just say in this case, it's not your fault. The problem is it is your responsibility because of your role that you have within the company. And so if we can go into this mindset that says, hey, in situations that get tough, I'm going to make a commitment to move towards it. I'm going to reject passivity. So again, I lifted this from somewhere else. I'm going to reject passivity and I'm going to move towards that thing. Because here's what we found. I had a buddy of mine tell me this. If you know somebody's going to punch you in the face, would you rather just stand there, lean back and take it? Or would you rather actually lean in and shorten the distance that arm has to extend? So yes, you are going to get hit, but you're not going to get hit with the full force and vigor that you would have had you just sat back, right? And I thought that was I'm not looking to get punched in the face. None of us are. But the reality is, if we can take that mindset and go, you know what, I'm just going to lean into this. And then with that, give ourselves some grace to say, hey, a fair amount of the time, I might have made the wrong decision, but I'm not going to be guilty of being passive. I'm not going to be guilty of standing back. And so for contractors that are listening to this and hearing things like team meetings and performance reviews and one-on-one check-ins or subdividing their bank accounts, paying attention to their finances, like all this stuff, right? Not, quote, robbing from Peter to pay Paul. By the way, the IRS calls that stealing, just so you know. So this take tomorrow's deposits and paying, yesterday's bills, that's not how contractor businesses are supposed to work. Well, everybody's doing it. Well, they're wrong. That's not how they're supposed to work. You're supposed to create enough margin as you go to actually pay for some of these projects that start. We don't fund yesterday's bills with tomorrow's deposits and when we're doing things. And so instead of taking that and just go, well, it's just the way we are, it's just the way it is, reject that passive mindset and begin to move towards, well, we don't really do a good job at team meetings. Well, then start doing the job, reject passivity, move towards that. And it may not be your fault that your meetings go off the rails because you got, Jimmy the talker over here who won't shut up, but it is your responsibility to pull him aside and say, hey, I need you to limit your conversation during our time together. And so really taking that ownership, in the military world, you guys call it extreme ownership, that Jocko Willink and all that kind of stuff, and going, it's not my fault. Yep. But it is your responsibility.
I love it, man. This is gold. I have to guess that the people you work with, you see drastic changes. But what I really how did you get into this? Like, you're such a wealth of knowledge. You had, this is, like I said, this is gold. This is word class, how you should think about this stuff. Like, how did you start working with contractors?
Well, my first client was a contractor. So that's how we got in. I don't have any background in it. Although I did take a used kitchen delivery van, and my sons and I turned it into a camper van. So we did have to put studs and walls and shiplap and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of classify myself as a contractor. Not really. I'm joking. We did do that, but
Low
on the contractor side.
entry.
Yeah, low barrier to entry. That's exactly right. It was called YouTube. So we YouTubed our way to that. But my first ever client was a friend of mine, and he was a contractor. He's a home builder. Still a client of mine, by the way, over 10 years in. In fact, I'll have dinner with him tonight. And so we were talking, and I said, "Hey, I want to start coaching business owners, and I want to coach you." And he said, "That's awesome. What are you going to coach me on?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to coach you on how to run a business." He's like, "Well, I mean, no offense, but I'm doing pretty well." And he was about $12, $13 million contract at that point for new construction ground up. And I said, "Yeah, but I think there's some things. Do you feel like you're heading the direction you want to go?" He's like, "Absolutely not. Like, I am so confused and whatever." And I said, "All right, well, let's work on that." And so Ron, he was so gracious to me to pay me to come in and literally build a curriculum based on my conversations with him. And now at the same time, there were others who were hiring me as well. So I had kind of a critical mass of all these conversations. And as we were doing that, I was literally building an operating system and not knowing I was doing it. I was just taking what I was learning and starting to piece it out. How is a business built? God, there's an organism part of this. There's got to be some algorithm or method to this, just like a human body is built out into 11 or 12 core systems, right? So the business has to be built out in systems. And so as we went, I just started working with more contractors. We started identifying more systems and understanding how they work together and integrated. And I then turned those into templates that we could just plug information in. And now we got a full-blown operating system that a contractor comes in and we're like, "Hey, we've already got the vision, mission, values, the anchor, the culture counters. We got the org charts and the hiring processes and the level 2 fiscal dashboards and the ROI calculators. All that stuff's built based on all of this." But as we started working with more contractors, then I got invited by NHB to come speak at a 20 club, and then come speak at this 20 club, and come speak at IBS, and come speak at AGC, and all this thing. So it just sort of grew that the more we worked with contractors, the more we worked with contractors at that point. So yeah, that's how we got into it.
That's awesome, man. I love it because this is what everybody needs to hear. It is the facts. It's I work with veterans starting up construction businesses, and we'll have our first week of our training next week. And I always start that lesson with the first thing that you need to get out of your mind is that you run a construction business. You run a business that happens to be the service of construction. And the sooner you realize that all the same business rules apply to you, the easier it is for you to be able to build this business.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think this is one of those things that we tell people all the time, that your product is not your product. And the reason is, I can prove it to you, is because it's a commodity. Your product is commodity. And so my product is coaching and advisory services. There's thousands of people that do this around the world. Your product maybe is building homes or remodeling homes or doing kitchen and baths or whatever. I can find thousands of people to do that. It's commodity. What is not commoditized is how the business is run to run that product. So we say your product is not your product. Your process is your product. Your process is what you're selling. And so if you give a good process, people will buy. But if you give a poor process, for instance, McDonald's gives me a poor process. Therefore, I don't eat there very often unless I absolutely have to. Is because I don't like their product, which is their process. I could stomach a bad hamburger as long as it was a delightful experience. And so where I love to go when I'm out west is In-N-Out. Is their hamburger far superior to McDonald's? It's better, but it's not world class. But I love their process. The way they make me feel when I walk into the place is absolutely delightful. So every time I was just in Los Angeles last week, or San Francisco, and before I headed to the San Francisco airport, hit In-N-Out on my way out. Why? Because I love the process. I love the story.
I love it, man. This has been one of my favorite shows we've done. We're coming up on 300 of these. I love this conversation. I love everything that you're doing. So for everybody that's listening, if they wanted to connect with you, follow you, learn more, I'd like figure out how they work with you, what's the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, appreciate you asking, Ron. It's generous of you. So best way is because we've got so many resources on our website. Just go to our website, businessonpurpose.com, businessonpurpose.com. I've got 2 books up there. One's called The Chaos Free Contractor. It's a great place to start if you want to go get that. And by the way, it's 110 pages. So my first book was over 200 pages, and I learned from working with contractors, they're like, we don't read that much. So if you could make it a little bit smaller and bigger font, we would love that. So we did. And so the Chaos Free Contractor is really, really good. I get into financials, project starts, how to do projections on a very simple, and everything is spreadsheetable. So no expensive software, any of that kind of stuff. You can start with a basic spreadsheet to be able to do that.
Awesome, man. I love it. Thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
Absolutely. Ron, thanks for, again, building this podcast. A lot of work, and I'm grateful that you would share it with me for sure.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. All right, construction champions, another episode in the bag. And like I said, I mean, this is Scott. It's speaking to what I core believe around the construction industry. I have slept both sides of this, where it's complete chaos, and then you go through the transaction to get the transition to get rid of the chaos and what it's like on the other side. It's never going to be perfect, but we shouldn't be chasing perfection. We should just be accepting responsibility, like Scott said. When you're there, okay, here's I'm going to go into something that irritates me that we hear all too often is when something goes wrong and we're dealing with a customer, instead of owning it, we have a pocket full of excuses. That customer don't care. It doesn't help your business. You know how much stuff I've owned that hasn't been my fault throughout the years? Still to this day. Because if I own the business, or if you're the leader, or if you're the one responsible in the business for something that does it as something happens, you have to own it and figure it out to make it right. And spending 5 minutes explaining how it wasn't your fault when you're still going to have to figure out how to fix it, like, that has always been my deter right there. Is like, why are we wasting 5 to 10 minutes actually irritating a customer, an employee? We're irritating them even more because we want to have this little pity party on why it's really not our fault, but we're still going to figure it out. Why don't we just take responsibility and get to fixing it and save the 10 minutes and save the headache for the client having to listen to you explain why you think it's not your fault, when at the end of the day, you're the one doing the work. In that client's mind, it's your fault. Like, that's just what they believe. And it can be emotions. It can be what their cousin told them that it's your fault, but it's the reality. And when you're dealing with customers and employees, what reality is showing is the reality that you have allowed to create and live. So if you don't do the stuff Scott's talking about doing, you create a bad reality that you live every day. If you do this stuff, I can tell you, the reality changes. The problems don't necessarily always go away. But one of the great analogies that Scott used in this episode is when he talked about leaning in before you get hit. It might not surprise. I've been in a few fights. I was in the Marine Corps. Like, he's a spot on. Like, if you know it's about to go down, you're not getting back. You're leaning, you're getting in there. And that's what happens, is that reality, when it hits you, it's not as bad, because you've done the appropriate work and you prepared yourself for that situation. So, construction champions, make sure you go check out everything Scott's doing. And until next time, be the champion you're meant to be.